Along Sherbrooke Street in Montreal, it's hockey weather here in La Belle Province. It's the panel brought to you by Sport Chek. Tom Gazzola with Bob Stauffer and Jack Michaels from 630 Ched. Gentlemen, coming out of the All-Star break, everyone had high hopes for the Oilers. They were playing very well. They beat a couple of good teams within the division, and then all of a sudden they dropped three straight. Is it time to panic, or should we kind of temper people being worried right now?
Well, I think it's the latter. First of all, obviously you were not a product of a French immersion school.
I actually was.
I was thinking the same thing. You butchered that, buddy.
Secondly, I think the Oilers have gotten better in every game since the All-Star break. I don't think they played particularly well against Minnesota. They also ran into a team that's playing the best of anyone out there in the National Hockey League. The second game was against the Nashville Predators, and the Oilers picked up their defensive game quite a bit. I mean, Nashville and Edmonton, there wasn't much to separate the two teams in terms of chances. I thought Pekka Rinne saw the puck exceptionally well. I even think the Oilers did a decent job of getting traffic in front of him. Perhaps their shot selection a lot disappeared into his leather. And then against Carolina on Friday night, quite frankly, I thought Edmonton was the better team. So sometimes when you're on a losing streak, you start to get healthy before the results come. And I think Edmonton has played a healthier game each and every time out. I'm not worried at all about how they'll come out Sunday afternoon.
Stoff, what have you seen these last three?
Well, I think and I totally concur with Jack's thoughts in terms of the improvement in the overall game, especially on the defensive side. They also got two goaltending performances from Cam Talbot that gave him a puncher's chance to win the games in Nashville and Carolina. But the Oilers have run dry up front, especially on the left side. I mean, you spoke to Milan Lucic yesterday. He's the first to acknowledge he needed to get going. He doesn't have an even strength goal in 26 games. You take a look at Benoit Pouliot. He's struggled. This has been a tough year after two really good years for Benoit. He's been snake bit, hasn't scored in 24 games. And then Patrick Maroon, who was on fire with 10 goals over a 12-game span, he's not scored in 9. So those are your top three left wingers. Connor McDavid tried to will the Oilers to victory yesterday. He was brilliant in that game against Carolina. And then Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jordan Eberle. There's more guys that are, they're being counted on to scoring. They'd be the first to admit that, they need to get a little bit more offensive juice going. So the Oilers need to get some secondary scoring here and get some guys, as Jack would say, off the schneid. And no better place than being in La Belle Province.
La Belle Province.
And watching
that was a little better.
Thank you.
Yes, and watching the Canadian. I think guys get jacked to play in that building. The fans are into it, and so Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has had some of his best games in his NHL career there. I'm really looking for. I think they can get going against this team, against the Canadians.
Absolutely. There are ebbs and flows to a long season like this. What do you guys make of the demeanor, really quickly, of the group during this down stretch, if you want to call it that?
Well, I think it's embodied in what their head coach, Todd McCullough, said, a good response to last night's game. Look, these are not necessarily the most inexperienced players anymore. I mean, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jordan Eberle are way past the kid point. I mean, they're seasoned veterans in the league. You've added some guys like Milan Lucic, like Patrick Maroon, who've been on lengthy playoff runs before. They know when they've played a solid game, and they didn't get rewarded. That's the nature of the National Hockey League. Sometimes you run into a hot goaltender. Sometimes you run into three iron posts that, turn maybe a 4-2 win into a 2-1 victory. That's just the game. And I think heading into Montreal, you talk about ebbs and flows of the season. I mean, the Canadians have been playing 500 hockey for the last 20 games. They got off to that great start, 13-1-1, and what that does is give you a cushion. But they haven't played great lately. And going into the Washington game, Carey Price has won just 5 of his last 15 starts. So I think there's reason for optimism on a couple different fronts. I think Edmonton has played much better in each of its last 2 games, and I don't think Montreal is anywhere near the level they were at in the first month of the season.
Bob, Jack gave us a little look into tomorrow's game. What are you thinking?
Well, I just, there's certain places, like I thought the Oilers kind of worked themselves into a game in Nashville. You take a look at the fact 4 shots on goal. And even against Carolina, like they didn't really go out and try to grab that game. And those were, Nashville's a loud building, but Carolina, I know they're going with the Red Volution. That's their big
Red
saying.
Volution,
There was
yes.
a lot of red in that building, but that's because of the empty seats. That won't be the case with Connor McDavid coming into Montreal. And I think the Oilers are going to be ready to go right from the get-go. I think that building brings the best out in players. So to paraphrase Mark Messier when he won the 1984 Conn Smythe Trophy, I fully expect tomorrow to be a kicker.
All right. As always, guys, pleasure doing this with you from Rue Sherbrooke. It's the panel brought to you by Sport Chek. These guys have the call for you tomorrow at 11 a.m. I've got you covered right here on Oilers TV.